regular meeting of Washington, Missouri City Council, Monday, September 19th, 2022, 7 p.m. Bear? Briggs?
Here.
Coulter?
Here.
Heidrich?
Here.
Holtmeyer?
Here.
Pathke?
Here.
Reed? Wessels?
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will all the council members answer if they have or have not read the minutes of the council meeting dated September 6, 2022? Briggs?
Yes.
Coulter?
Yes.
Heidrich?
Aye.
Holtmeyer?
Yeah.
Pathke?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Patkey, second by Holtmeyer. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
By your motion, the minutes are approved.
Approval and adjustment of agenda, including consent agenda. You have the collector's treasurer's report summary for June 2022, monthly investment report for June 2022, and liquor license renewals.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we move item 3A to the end of public hearings, just for the fact of the other ones before that will be real quick.
Okay.
Don't have to, but
Okay.
We
Sherry?
put it at the beginning so that,
I'd rather do it first.
well, that's the reason why we put it on the agenda this way, so that we could go ahead, have that hearing first, wait for the others later.
Don't have to have a second.
And we also have the budget going.
Yeah, that's at the
The
end.
budget one might be a while, I think.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Holtmeyer. Any seconds?
Second. Was he, I think he was seconding.
Joe, you were second? Is
I
that-
guess, second or.
Wait, hold on. Are we making a motion to move item 3A, or are we making a
Move it, you wanna
motion?
leave it like the way it is.
I think leave it the way it is.
And make a motion that way.
Okay. Motion to leave it like it is.
Second.
Okay. Any
I'm sorry,
sec-
who made, Joe, you did the first? To leave it as is?
Okay, motion by Holtmeyer. Okay,
Second by Packer.
Thank you.
and second?
Second.
Second by Coulter. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Was
By
that
your
a nay?
vote, the approval and adjustment for the agenda is passed for consent. Okay.
Public hearings, special use permit 2132 Highway A temporary shelter.
Way to go.
All right, good evening, council. Pull up my notes real quick. All right, so I'm going to start with a little background of how we got here, because obviously this is the first time we've had a request of this special use permit since we've had the definition in our code. But I'm sure, as many of you are aware, in 2019, there was a homeless shelter proposed on a commercial property that was on Highway 47, right by the bridge. It's now the medical marijuana dispensary. But at the time, we did not have a definition for what a homeless shelter was in our city code. We were trying to figure out how to place it in a commercial district. At that time, if someone wanted to consider, a hotel being free, then that could go in a commercial district. And we understood that it's never good to not have a definition of a use that's in your city limits. You want to have all definitions, all uses defined in your code. And so we went, and the city attorney and city staff looked at what other communities have done and some other actual definitions. And in 2019, City Council passed a new ordinance pertaining to homeless shelters. And it's defined as short-term emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, or child abuse, and or temporary residential shelter for homeless individuals or families, runaway youth, and patients and families caught in a medical crisis. These establishments may operate their own shelters or may subsidize housing under using existing homes, apartments, hotels, or motels. So that was actually given the use a definition. And the next step after that in that ordinance was to determine where it was permitted in our code. And it was voted to require them to be in at least located in M1, M2, which are our light and heavy industrial zoning districts, and that they have to get a special use permit. And so that passed in 2019. And so on this specific application, as you all are aware, it is proposed at the location of Highway A and Chamber Drive. Right there, it does have access to both Chamber Drive and Highway A, and it's previously the location of Level 9 heating and cooling. And you can see here it is zoned M2 heavy industrial, as is most or all the lots in that industrial park. These yellow parcels to the south that I'm pointing out used to be residential. Just a couple months ago, those were rezoned to heavy industrial as well, because they're not used industrially are not used residentially anymore, and they're part of that self-storage factory or property. And so this whole area is located in the industrial park as M2 heavy industrial. So again, a little history on what a special use is. Our code allows for special uses, 4 types of uses which tend to be problematic. So a good example, I mean, a gas station is considered a special use. Anytime someone wants to get build a gas station, they have to go through this process to determine if it's going to have a detriment on the surrounding property. So our code defines 3 areas that they tend to be problematic: if they have a tendency to generate significant traffic volumes and or turning movements. Number 2, have operational characteristics that may have a detrimental impact on adjacent or nearby properties. And 3, have other characteristics which may impact public health, safety, or welfare, but can be approved if such uses meet the criteria established herein. So I'm going to go through 10 criteria that are in our code specifically, and go through how we got to our recommendation and P&Z's recommendation last week. But again, special uses also include public and quasi-public uses affected with public interest, and in order to ensure that detrimental impacts are avoided or mitigated to a satisfactory level, they must be reviewed and may be approved in accordance with the provisions of Section 400.205. So basically that means that you look at these criterion, 1 through 10, that I'm going to go through, and if there are conditions that you can, if there's any area where they don't meet that criterion, city staff can recommend and council can approve conditions on that use to lessen the detriment of that. So the first 6 I'm going to go through here. The compatibility of the proposal in terms of both use and appearance with the surrounding neighborhood. Well, as we know, they're not building anything. The structure the use is completely done indoors, and it's an existing industrial property and an industrial park, so we felt it met that criterion. The comparative size, floor area, and mass of the proposed structure in relationship to adjacent structures and buildings in the surrounding properties in the neighborhood. Again, all industrial uses surrounding and on the subject property, so we feel it meets that as well. Number 3, the frequency and duration of various indoor and outdoor activities and special events and the impact of these activities in the surrounding area. There's been no indication of any special events or indoor or outdoor activities specifically, and then any indoor activities, there's no reason to believe that it's going to have a detriment on the surrounding property, given, again, its nature an industrial district. Number 4, the capacity of adjacent streets to handle increased traffic in terms of traffic volumes, including hourly and daily levels. From the proposed use, we have seen no evidence that the trips per day are going to be many more intensive than we'd see with an industrial use. So there's not a concern of increased physical traffic. We have discussed the possibility of having a lot of foot traffic increase with this. The applicant did say that they can possibly anticipate 50%, maybe not coming by vehicle. However, there's not great pedestrian facilities in the area. But again, however, in an industrial area, there's not necessarily going to be sidewalks. So when our code requires an industrial area, that is not necessarily a condition we felt that we could impose when the code is encouraging you to be into an industrial district. Number 5, the added noise level created by activities associated with the proposed use. Again, no evidence of increased noise. Number 6, the requirements for public services where demands of the proposed use are in excess of the individual demands of adjacent land uses in terms of police and fire protection, and the presence of any potential or real fire hazards created by proposed use. Well, there's not any evidence of increased potential of real fire hazard by this use. Obviously, there's some life safety if there's need for access, but obviously it has decent access for fire and ambulance. And as terms of police protection, we did speak with the police chief, and there was, again, no evidence that there is any inclination that our existing fire department, our police department can't handle the proposed use. Number 7, where the general appearance of the neighborhood will be adversely affected by the location of the proposed use on the parcel, again, with no new construction proposed. We don't necessarily make a recommendation on anticipated clientele, but actually the use of the property, and so there's no reason for staff to believe they don't meet that criterion. Number 8, the impact of night lighting in terms of intensity, duration, and frequency of use. There's no evidence that there's going to be additional night lighting. The impact of landscaping of the proposed use in terms of maintenance, landscaped areas versus areas to remain in natural state. Again, no changes, it's all done inside. And lastly, the impact of a significant amount of hard serviced areas for buildings, sidewalks, drives, parking areas. Again, it's taking an existing building and changing the use, not actually adding any hard surfaced areas to the site. And then there's no additional water runoff or heat generation from the proposed use. So given those factors of consideration, staff looks at all special uses strictly off a land use basis, and we feel that the request does meet these criterion. In our staff report that was in your packet, we did not have any additional conditions of approval. That wasn't to say that staff felt there wasn't a need for conditions of approval. What we thought was best to hear from the applicant and the public at the first public hearing last week at Planning and Zoning, and go through that process, and then hear the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation as well. But last Monday, they did vote in favor 7-1 to approve the conditional use with the condition that any outdoor area be screened from view of the public. So that was the only condition that P&Z added. I will just say 2 things that came up that I think were repeated multiple times in the public hearing. Well, there's quite a bit I'm sure we'll hear tonight. Staff can't make recommendation based on how the property is actually operated, but there are some things that, when it comes down to it, that we think could be additional conditions. One of them is maximum occupancy. So our building, an International Fire Code, already has a maximum occupancy that can be determined based on the square footage of the building. We can't tell you what that is until we see plans from it. We know the calculation, and we think it's just given a ballpark because it's 3,600 square foot building. You got to take out hallways and bathrooms that you can get 18 to 20 people would be the max that the fire code would even allow to be in there at a given time. And then the other condition we would propose is maybe an annual inspection requirement. So when they get their business license renewed every June or whenever it comes up, to have an annual inspection to make sure there's still the same amount of beds and they're still meeting that on an annual basis. And so those were just 2 things that we thought from hearing from the public and from P&Z last week that conditions could be added that were reasonable to the application. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll open it up to the public.
Any questions for Sal? Anybody?
Do you guys have any questions on the council for Sal?
Do they have enough parking spaces there?
They do. So the parking, well, I'll say that hesitantly. The parking is something we review with occupancy, and with that type of use, it's 1 parking space for every 4 beds. So they'd have to give us the plan of how many beds are proposed to be there. But even if we went with the higher end of that occupancy, they do have enough parking.
Okay.
Other questions, guys? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Briefing.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, go ahead, Sal.
I'm just going to leave the laser pointer up here if anyone wants to point the property and works with that button.
Check and see if anybody signed in.
Before you start talking, I'd like to say something, please. Okay. Guys, I know this is a very emotional and passionate issue. Bring that, please. But I ask everyone to honor our flag and our Pledge of Allegiance that we had today and be respectful. I've asked that of our council, and I ask it of you tonight. So what we're going to do, so everyone can have a chance to speak, we're going to limit comments to 3 minutes, and we'll have a clock up here. So,
It's limited. It's limited to the people that signed up.
that signed up, and we do have a court reporter. So, with that, sir, can you introduce yourself and say your address?
My name is Joe Adams. I'm a resident of Western Missouri, And I was told to just approach the podium. Had no idea. I asked about that previously, and they said, no, just approach the podium.
Okay.
If you could sign into it when you get done, sir, then
Sure.
that way they've
Okay.
got it for the court report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm an expert in this field, beyond your imagination. I've established security and for these kind of facilities all over the United States. I am the chief investigator for SELA, which is the largest nonprofit foundation for rescue for these people to come into facilities for rehabilitation, much more extensive than this, okay? What's important, and I'll make a statement, and please hold your questions till I'm finished. I'm a licensed private investigator, state of Missouri. I have been since licensing was issued. I'm licensed to protect persons and property, state of Missouri. I have done protective services internationally for 52 years in the intelligence industry. I know all about these facilities. That being said, I'm for it. We're humanity. We have to help these people. People don't call me every day because they're having a good day. People don't go to these facilities because they're having a good day. It's up to our populace to help these people reestablish themselves because they have problems. That's our obligation. But with these facilities comes responsibility. They need a business plan, which I have not seen. Location, foot traffic, highways. Safety of the client, shuttle services. They've already admitted 50% of their people don't even have transportation. Security, by who and at what level? Their clients, background checks, at what level? FBI level? Somebody said something about CaseNet, which is crap. Okay, as an investigator, I'm telling you, that's crap. Well, we can't do background checks on some of these people because they don't have identities. Yes, they do. As an investigator for SELA, we had people from under bridges come to the facilities, and they sent investigators out, not by phone, to talk to neighbors, people, friends. During the interviews, you can ID these people. Who is eligible for these facilities? What area? City? Washington? Like we don't have a homeless problem here? County? State? Interstate? This is a small facilities. They're talking about 25 people in the facilities. My garage is bigger than that facilities. I've dealt with these facilities for a long time. There's no way you can house 25 people or family members in these facilities. It's more like, as we talked with some of the people today, 12, 15 tops. Citizenship. Is this facilities for non-citizens of the United States government? Is this facilities for people illegally here in this country? Drug abuse, big issue. A lot of people's problems goes back to drugs. What criminal history is acceptable? Drug use. Drug test frequency, how often? What is frequency? 1 week, every 2 weeks, every 6 months?
Joe, your 3 minutes are up. I'm sorry. Can you wrap it up?
Yeah, real quick.
Okay.
What's illegal drugs in these facilities? Legal use. Location of interviews for these clients shouldn't be on campus. They should be off campus. Sudden drop-offs. You're going to have a problem with that. You're going to have other facilities drop off people at the front door and leave, and then where do they go? They even mentioned that about buses dropping people off. Staff. Background checks on the staff. Continuous. Clients' background checks.
Joe, these are all questions that I think Greg Hobrock, the owner, will be able to answer. So I'm going to ask if you...
Thank you. Getting questions from me? You have questions with me, you can call the sheriff or you can call the chief of police in this county and they'll answer your questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Please sign in.
Just gonna put the anagram on there, his group, who he's with.
Good evening. My name is Bob Zick. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I had 10 minutes worth of comments, and so I'm going to try and talk faster. Please indulge me just a little bit. A couple things I'd like to stress about our intended use. First of all is that This is not going to be your typical homeless center. What we intend to run is a facility that'll be primarily by referral from police officers, school officials, hospital officials, and that sort of thing. Secondly, this is not going to be a facility for the chronically homeless. We know that we're not going to be prepared to deal with folks who have serious mental issues or are just chronically homeless and have been that way a long time and no real desire to get out of the hole, as they say. In terms of the operation, the facility will be run by a professional staff selected by the fiduciary board of Life's River. Staff will be supervising the operation 24/7, 365. There'll be time limits placed on the length of time a person can stay in the facility, and residents will be required to have a plan to get back into the housing market and their workforce. A code of conduct will require all guests to maintain good behavior and personal hygiene. Shower and laundry facilities will be provided. One of the rules to be contained in our code of conduct will be that residents not be permitted to go through neighboring yards to access to and from the facility. This is something that came up at the planning and zoning issue, and that's our proposed solution. Financial literacy, life skills, and good tenant skills are things that we're going to promote.
Thank you.
Sorry. We've had discussions with the hospital about providing an evening meal, and we'll probably provide a light breakfast. Weapons, alcohol, illegal drugs, and paraphernalia will not be allowed on the property. Drug tests will be conducted. Quiet hours will start at 9 p.m. in the facility. Any person who does not meet these rules is going to be asked to leave the facility. Any person who's not working actively to improve their situation, to become employed or employable or attain housing, will be asked to leave the facility. The typical resident we see taking advantage of the facility is a young mother or father with 2 kids who's down on their luck, and all of a sudden they have no place to go. You know, it's difficult to save a first month's rent and damage deposit if you're living day to day and making survival funds only. We would offer to meet with city officials 2 times a year to hear concerns and issues. We've provided some of these principal operations to try and show you, number one, that we're listening and to be responsive to the community. However, we need to remind the City Council that you're making a land use decision. If you're asked to approve a special use permit for a gas station, you do not go into the details of the operation. Yes, gas is dangerous, but you assume that the people who run the gas station know that, and they're going to be careful and not do anything crazy with volatile gas. Similarly, in this situation, industrial zoning classification allows temporary shelters by special use permit. The City Council should decide if there are special conditions, as Sal discussed, that are relevant to this particular site. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended that a fence be erected on outside aggregation areas, and we're agreeable to that. Getting into the weeds about how the homeless will get to the facility, how they'll be cared for, what rules will ensure privacy and hygiene, what credentials will be required for the staff, all those types of details are no more appropriate to ask at a special use permit consideration like this on a land use decision than they would be for the operation of a gas station. We've already visited with at least one other temporary homeless shelter in Maryland Heights, and several more visits are planned to get tips on best practices. We will be running the facility in a first-class fashion. Now let's talk about the 2%. We would caution the City Council against making an important decision with severe consequences based on the vocal 2% of folks that you may have heard from. There's probably 98% of the compassionate citizens of Washington that would agree that we should be helping those less fortunate. You were elected because your views are respected. We would ask you to use your good judgment and make this decision based on what's truly right for all the folks in our community. I believe it's also important to look at the analysis that Sal provided both at the planning zoning and at the hearing here tonight. He went carefully through the 10 criteria and acknowledged that this site meets all those criteria. So you have a zoning code that allows temporary shelters in industrial districts. You have a staff recommendation that the criteria in considering deciding a granting of a special use have been met. And you have an applicant that's willing to comply with the condition contained in the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation to have fencing around the outside areas. And you have a problem. For goodness sakes, we had a homeless person staying in City Hall for a week or two back in 2018, according to the article in the Missourian. I know we all agree that Washington is a great community, but isn't one of the true measures of a great community the manner in which they treat their most downtrodden? Isn't kindness truly the most human of resources and characteristics? We want to make this temporary shelter a facility for the homeless, to be kind to our fellow man, to give a hand up, not a handout. Please help us do that and approve this special use permit. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Bob, I have a question. I'm curious how you're going to keep people off people's yards when there's no sidewalks on Highway A. There's no sidewalks on Steuben Road either.
You know, there's no sidewalks there now.
I understand that.
And people get in and out of our community every day. Some of them go on Highway A, some of them go other places. If at some point it becomes appropriate because the foot traffic is overwhelming, you know, maybe a solution is to put sidewalks in at some point. But again, we don't think that that's an operational detail that need not be solved at this moment. The question, and it's certainly not appropriate for a private citizen or a private not-for-profit corporation to have to put in sidewalks. We're going to be as careful as we can about safety. We're going to take into account the recommendations of the police department and any noted experts on safety and security. We're willing to run this in the best possible way that we can, but we can't answer all those questions at this particular moment in time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
You want to read up the list? Hey, ma'am, can you want to let her know? Ma'am, we're going to go ahead, if I may. We've got a list of everybody that wishes to speak tonight. So what we'd like to do is just read off of that list, and we'll read them up, and we'll call the names up. Okay. So, okay?
Just to keep me organized. So,
Good enough.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
I think this is Beth.
Yes.
there you go.
Yes, ma'am.
I was first on the list. So
Very
that's
good.
why I came up.
Name and address, Beth, please.
Thank you. My name is Beth Niederholtmeyer, and I'm a resident of Washington, Missouri. I'm concerned about moving too quickly on the special use permit for Washington and feel more information is needed for the city council and the general public. I do have empathy for children that are homeless. Has Life River Organization performed a study on how many children are homeless in Washington? Does the city or Life River Organization have an approximate number of children that are currently homeless? Has the city or Life River Organization performed a study on how this type of facility has succeeded in other cities, or does it cause more problems for our current residents? Has Life River Organization submitted to the city and our city council detailed rules, regulations, and consequences on how those rules and regulations will be carried out and managed? Although the homeless have the right to be on public property, it is a deterrent for other residents who use those facilities and live in some of the neighborhoods. Individuals who are in the parks downtown, the riverfront, behind schools, etc. We do have a homeless problem in Washington, and whether we like it or not, it does cause fear for the public, both on private and public land. I also have been told by reputable individuals that work for the city, some individuals do choose to be homeless. It's their lifestyle choice. They love to be in Washington because we are such a giving community. We also have homeless issues due to drugs, alcohol addiction, or mental illness, which is my understanding is not what this facility is supposed to be addressing. I'm sure our police department is appreciative of that, already overworked in areas of addressing this issue for both homeless and not homeless. My understanding is there will be drug testing. If there is a positive drug result, what is the next step? What happens to the children at this point? Are they thrown out on the street with their parents or guardian? What are the regulations? What is the normal time frame that is allowed in a homeless shelter? And where are the funds coming from to support the shelter? In closing, I feel the City Council of Washington has the right to review detailed rules, regulations, and management of the facilities, because this facility will affect this entire community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beth. Mike Johns, please. Mike Johns, please.
Mike John, 16 Robert Street. I own Moe's Pizza. I'm coming up here because the problem's not going to go away. We have to address it eventually. And right now we have people that are willing to step up and be the spearhead to this. We know that things are not going to be perfect. They won't be. I promise you that. But there's companies like mine that have been doing it for years already, trying to help and make a difference. And now there's people coming beside us to even try. In this council, I've been here a lot of times, and one of your key statements, if it saves one life, I've heard it out of your mouths. If it saves one life, it's worth it. But right now, we're talking about saving families, saving people, generational change that can happen right now in this town. We have a people right now willing to do it. They're not asking you for anything but approval to help change lives. I think it's time now to move forward with this. We have all kinds of things we want to say and help. Now's the chance to make a difference in this town right now. And I'll go to the source. Jesus Christ said, "What have you done for the least of these? You've done for me." Every life matters. Let's make it matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Jonathan Hanna, I believe that's your last name. If I mispronounce names, I'm sorry tonight.
No, you got it right. Jonathan Hanna, 5807 Studeman Road, Washington, Missouri, Ward 3. Council members, Mayor. My wife and I are cautiously for the homeless transitional shelter at the proposed address off of Highway A. Here are some succinct and formal reasons that has led to this stance. First, we have personally gotten to know several individuals that struggle with homelessness who would probably benefit from a homeless transitional shelter. Some seem eager to work and to get into some form of housing, yet some need some aid in doing this. My wife and myself think this proposed transitional shelter is part of that aid, along with other services. Second, the evidential data seems to suggest that some form of housing is a key part of the solution to at least some, if not much, of the homelessness issue. As Greg Colborn and Clayton Page Aldern has recently stated in their book, Homelessness is a Housing Problem, published through University of California Press, quote, "In study after study, the most effective treatment of homelessness is housing. And if end quote. And if immediate housing cannot be found, Colburn and Aldrin conclude, quote, living in a quality shelter is preferable than to living in unsheltered on the streets, end quote. Third, my wife and I are cautious for the reasoning that in some instances, property crime can increase within a certain distance of homeless shelters, and this is an analogous situation. A study that was done in warming shelters that within about 100 to 400 yards of the shelter, some property crime went up. Yet, commercial establishments, 34% lower were breaking and entering, so actually crime fell for commercial situations. This mixed bag of statistics, along with others, should be considered as to how to best implement our local transitional shelter. Fourth, I talked with 2 different households beyond my own on their views on the potential transitional homeless shelter in our neighborhood. And all these individuals live along Studerman Road. One was ecstatic about the idea of a transitional shelter at the proposed location and said it was needed. The other said it was probably needed, yet was concerned about potential crime due to having younger children. Overall, the cumulative response, I think, can be fairly described as cautiously for the same position that my wife and I hold, though others beyond this informal poll may have different views. To conclude, more could be said, but we urge the council to vote in favor of allowing this transitional homeless shelter at the proposed location and to allow it to move forward. I think it's very much needed. In the winter, I can see the building from my house and would be glad to call Life's River my neighbor. The shelter must be ran responsibly. I cannot urge that enough. But then also at the same time, and even more important, we cannot continue with the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Annie Foncannon.
Hello, Annie Foncannon, 335 Nathan Drive, Foley, Missouri. But I work down here. I'm the executive director of the Children's Services Fund here in Franklin County, and the person who runs the Family Resource Center over in Union, Missouri. I am coming to give you numbers because people have asked for numbers.
Yay.
So one of the things that I'm involved with is the Homeless Task Force. In a 6-month period, the Homeless Task Force took calls from 112 family units, and out of that 112, that was 156 adults and 75 children. 42 of those families were from Washington, so a third of them were from Washington within that 6-month period. 19 Sullivan, 16 St. Clair, 12 Union, 4 Gray Summit, 3 Villa Ridge, 1 each from Pacific, Gerald, and Berger, and then 8 from adjoining communities, all to the west and the south of us. Currently, in the school district of Washington, they have 25 families, children with families, who are currently living in transition. When they say living in transition, it is people who have unstable homes. Either they're homeless or they're doubled up with someone who could kick them out at any time. It's actually a low number for them and usually occurs at the beginning of the school year because a lot of families don't want to divulge that information for fear that they're going to be reported to Children's Division and something may happen. Just to give you an example, in 21-22, they had 34 students. In 2021, they had 57 students and families from the Washington School District who are living in transition. So the numbers are there. Just to give you a kind of just as of today, on the way here today, I received a call on the Homeless Task Force hotline of a mom and a 12 and a 13-year-old child who were living doubled up with her stepdad, who is elderly, and he has said, "They're too loud, I can't do this, you've got to get out." I received a call earlier today, just on our phone number at the Family Resource Center, with a mom with a 4-month-old baby that is homeless and was looking for someplace to go and stay. And this happens on a daily basis. We are getting phone calls from individuals. Twice in the past 6 months, I have gotten calls from some agencies that work with us about a mother with a newborn who, if we couldn't find them a place to go, the child was going to have to be taken into state custody, all because they are in poverty and they were homeless. They both were actually eligible to get HUD financing, but that takes 15 days. So would we rather have a place for them to transition to go to within that 15 days that they could learn and grow and help them, and that child can actually stay out of state care, and then that way they can be in stable housing and we can continue to help them afterwards? Because that's one thing. I'm also a member of the board of Life's River, and this is not going to be a one and done, and once they're in housing, we're going to be out of their lives. We are actually going to follow them for several years and work with them in order to make sure that they're good renters, or owners of that matter, if we can get there,
Yeah,
that
if
they
I could ask you to wrap
continue
it up, huh?
to do that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Rocco Gonzalez, please.
Hello, my name is Rocco Gonzalez, address 1938 Meriwether Drive, Ward 3, right down the street from the proposed location. Thank you for the time, council. I know it's going to be a long night, and we're thankful for your time, really. So as the Mercy Community Health Director, I really have had the privilege of leading our Mercy Community Health Worker team to provide clinical and social care coordination for various underserved patients of our community. For those who are experiencing homelessness, my team has served nearly 80 different individuals in our hospital within the last year alone, where 41% were female, 59 male, and almost half of those had not ever seen a primary care provider in the past, resorting to the emergency department for their care. Oddly enough, this week marks the day our foundress, Catherine McCauley, created a refuge for women and children on the street without any lifeline or assistance. This is called the House of Mercy. Unfortunately, almost 200 years later, the same struggles remain for certain people in our own Washington community. They may not be on the street, but they are in their cars, couch surfing, and even in tents. Life's River strives to be the impactful resource for the underserved in our community. Today, that the House of Mercy started long ago. Still, throughout all the time, the cornerstones of our organizations remain the same: human dignity. The idea that each person is made in the image and likeness of God. Respecting this dignity, we serve all those around us to ensure they feel respected and valued. To make certain these community members keep their dignity, we know that there are fundamental goods they need to thrive: food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and other basic needs of life. These common good resources allow each person access to the necessary pieces to reach their full human potential. While Mercy and other anchor institutions attempt to fill this gap, the health disparities still remain. Life's River will play its part to provide another resource that is not within our community today: transitional housing and care coordination for our fragile families. Thank you. I'll welcome any questions.
Thank you, Rocco.
No, thank you.
John Strawn, you're next.
How you doing? I'm John Strawn. I've served on the board of a veterans women homeless shelter. The shelter that I served on, we actually had room for 18 people, so approximately the same size as what you're looking at. We had 4 rooms for double occupancy, which would have been 2 females in there. These were all veterans who were suffering from either abuse or had kind of lost their way and were trying to get back on their feet. So over the 2 years that I spent on the board, we had 2 full-time or part-time cooks. We had 2 part-time grounds and maintenance. We had 1 paid intake, and then we had 1 intake that was a volunteer nurse that would come in and review some of the medical records and stuff like that before we took them in. We did drug tests once a month. We made sure that all of the rules and regulations were followed. Some of the issues that we ran into, and I would just want to bring this up to the board so that you're aware of these things. We ran into problems with funding, and of course, everything runs by money. We were 55% supported by the VA. We were 31% supported by donations and grants and things like that that came in later on. So a lot of work from the board and the staff to go in and work and help and volunteer. A lot of volunteer from the local community. We sourced food from the local community. We also sourced medical, fire, of course, and police. Approximately, we would have maybe 2 to 3 calls per month on emergency services. And we did have to give a detailed plan of what we were doing to the city. So that was something that was brought up that you guys may want to consider. We did have to do that. We also had to provide a detailed sourcing of everything that we were doing to the VA as well, because they were our major funder. Over the process of that 2 years, we saw a lot of people get back on their feet. We did see a lot of drug use that came in and out of the facility. As soon as they tested positive, they were no longer eligible to be in the facility, so we actually had to remove them at that time. However, a lot of the funding from the VA would be removed as well when you remove them from the facility. One of the big concerns that we dealt with was the local community, and we did have issues with people going into other people's yards, and things would go missing and things like that. We tried to mitigate that as much as possible. We also tried to deal with the transportation side of it. We had a dedicated bus drivers that were volunteers that had 2 minivans, and we'd take them over to the VA facilities or the medical facilities, or to the Metrolink was where we were working with for their transportation to get to and from. You would want to consider what is around there for grocery type things. If they have no way to go and get groceries, you're going to have to provide transportation for them.
John, can you wrap it up?
Sure, absolutely. I'm done with that, and just wanted to give you some of the considerations that we had to deal with in our homeless veterans.
John, where was this facility?
Over in East St. Louis.
East St. Louis?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, John. Next is Marilyn Koenig.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Koenig, and I reside at 19.
Marilyn, can you pull down the
Can you
microphone?
pull that down? There we go. Thank you.
All right, I'll start over. My name is Marilyn Koenig, and I reside at 1933 Discovery Court here in Washington. My home is on a corner lot with the front facing Discovery Court, which is a dead-end street, which is awesome. And my driveway and everything is off Expedition. So we do have foot traffic up and down Expedition, along with large trucks and everything else. We are less than a mile away from the proposed shelter, and I'm here because I want to express my opinion on the shelter. My husband and I, who is here with me, are totally against it because we believe it's going to affect our property values. It's going to bring people through our neighborhood. You know, I'm not saying everybody's a bad person just because you're homeless. I don't mean to infer that, but we feel like that things could start going missing. You know, will our vehicles be safe outside? Will the children across the street be allowed to be outside by themselves for moments of time? We spoke to some of our neighbors, and all the ones that we spoke to were against it for various reasons, mentioning the strangers in the neighborhood, the small children, not wanting to worry about the safety of our stuff. When we moved from Herman to Washington about 6 years ago, we found a house in our price range. We've been working on improving it and making it our own. Basically, our home is our most important asset. You know, we can't really afford to watch it go down in property value, because if it does, that kind of sinks us also. I don't know for a fact that property values near homeless shelters go down, but that is what I've always heard. They also mentioned the sidewalks. There are no safe ways for pedestrians to get to the shelter. I drive Highway every day. I don't come that far down Highway A because of where I live, but there's a lot of traffic on Highway A. You put pedestrians out there and you're going to have a lot more accidents than what you already have. There are no sidewalks, but I don't think that the people who live along Highway A should be forced to put in a sidewalk for someone else's, which it is, a business. You know, that's a costly adventure to put in sidewalks. I believe that there are other industrial parks that are equally accessible. The one on Bluff Road in West Main, and very close to a lot of jobs. That should be a consideration. The industrial park out on Highway A is a smaller park. If the shelter's built, people are going to come. No matter how the shelter's set up, no matter what the rules are, they're going to show up in our community in hopes of getting into it. What are we going to do with them when they show up? You know, are they going to all of a sudden be living in the fields out there? I saw Pacific is now banning homeless camps. If we put out there, we're going to open a shelter, aren't we saying to Pacific, come on over to Washington? You know, we got some camping places available. A month or so ago, can I finish this thought?
Wrap it up, please, Marilyn.
Okay, a month or so ago, there were two homeless people on a church parking lot down from our house, and we saw them. They weren't harming anybody. They were sitting in a corner, probably sitting under the shade tree, eating and everything. The next day when we went past, they left mounds and mounds of trash for somebody else to clear up. I personally don't want to clear up other people's trash because in these times, you don't know what's in it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marilyn. Kim Boland, please.
Kim Boland, 121 Diamond Farm Lane in Villa Ridge. I'm with Life's River. I just want to share a little story with you. Ann and I have been doing a lot of research on homeless shelters, and with that research, we decided we needed to start visiting homeless shelters. And so far, we've only been to one. We have another one scheduled tomorrow, and we have several more that we're going to. But when we went there, we wanted to talk to the director and see what's working for them, what's not working for them, and get kind of a hands-on what people are doing. So my question was, how does it impact the neighbors? Because we've had a lot of concern about the neighbors. And so the director said, let me just tell you a little story. So this particular shelter that we went to was in Maryland Heights, and it is smack dab in the middle of a residential area. And it's in an old church that they converted into a shelter. And when you drive by, you would have no idea that it's a shelter. So somebody new moved into the neighborhood across the street, and after she moved in, she had found out from the neighbors that that was a shelter across the street. And she promptly went out and put no trespassing signs all over her yard. And after about 6 months of living there, she took all those signs down, and now she donates things to them. She volunteers her time there. So I guess what I'm saying is there's the perception and the reality, and I'd just like you to give us a chance to show you that the reality could be a real impact in Washington in a very positive way. Thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Next, Sue Manhart. Am I reading it properly? There's a Manhart on here.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Not a problem, Sue. Okay. Next, Greg Homerock. Do you want to go last, Greg?
If you would, you mind me, I want to address some of the things that people have raised, and
Yep.
I'm probably the best person to hear them all and address them.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. Thank you. Okay, Jeff Eckelkamp, please.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me come up here. Appreciate your time and leadership. My name, and I hope you can hear me back there okay, my name is Jeff Eckelkamp. If you look at the map up there, there's a little square in the red there. It shows blue as well. There's a house on it that's about over 100 years old. There's also an apartment there that my wife and I own. Kind of gives you an idea of where I'm located at compared to the property in question there. There's a lot of talented people or speakers. They're well-educated, knowledgeable. You could tell they've been well-studied and they did their homework. And it's appreciated, so it gives good discussion, so we do the right thing here tonight as far as Washington and hearing the right thing. You know, I think a lot of people, even the people that may be against this side or whatever, I may be, but it's not whether we need it or not need it in Washington, but it's a location that I'm concerned with in Washington here. And I want to make sure you're acutely aware, because I wouldn't sleep good at night if I wasn't up here to talk to you about it tonight. And we heard it, and there's several other things I brought up at the planning and zoning, but I know they're going to be addressed and talked about. The big concern I have, and it's heard many times, is have you been out there at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning? Have you been out there at noon, 4:35? What do we do downtown? We make nice sidewalks for our pedestrians. We have nice bike paths. We don't have anything for them out there. And I'm not even talking about the evening hours. I mean, right now it's light till 7. 4:30, 5 o'clock, you got 2 lanes of traffic going 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour, or faster. You got a third lane that people coming from the south going north. You ever try to make a turn into Reuther Court or that area there? You better watch out because they're making left-hand turns going into subdivision way before that. I almost got hit several times. My wife did too. The point I'm making is there's a lot of traffic, a lot of people going, and we're not talking about just 20 and 30 miles an hour there. I'm a doer. I'm in action. So I'm sitting outside. I hear an ambulance. I hear something. I hear squealing. I see somebody, a family, a kid, somebody gets hit out there. I'm going to run out there. Heavens forbid that I didn't say something to you tonight to make you aware of what I'm concerned with. So can we, what are we going to do as far as sidewalks, roadways and stuff? And say, well, we're going to get that. No, we got them in downtown. We got them other places that we need them. The other point, and the last point I like to make is, you're talking about drugs, and we're going to house 25 people. Who's going to enforce it? Who's going to make sure to execute on it? A part-time person or a person, administrator sitting inside? I'm sorry, I only got 25 beds or 20, but whatever it is, I got to turn you away. I think John made a statement, crime goes up. Where do you think that person's going to go? You know what? There's a shed over there. There's Bolin has a bunch of stuff over there. There's a little tree line down there. My goodness, there's a lake down there. I can go down there, and we heard about what already happens in the areas with trash and stuff. Those are my concerns. Those are one of the things. I think we need a shelter in Washington. I think a lot of people do. But let's make sure we pick the right location. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody.
Okay, next is Barb Wallach.
Hello, I'm Barb Wallach. I am also a resident of Washington. My sisters and I own about the only green area right across the street from where this is. First, I'd like to thank the applicant, the people who have spoke on behalf of this, for the new information they've provided. We didn't have a lot of that last week at Planning and Zoning, and it is very much appreciated. I also met with one of their board members, and I appreciated that information as well. I just have a couple questions and points that I'd like more clarity on. As I stated last week at Planning and Zoning, our biggest concern, and there is not a mouse in my pocket, my sisters and I own this property together, so if I say I or our, it's all of us. Concern for this is the safety. That's still my concern. Safety for the children and adults who find themselves using the shelter, as well as anyone who travels Highway A in all kinds of weather without even a shoulder on the highway. That may seem like a hypothetical situation that may or may not be an issue, but personally, with the accidents that happen on that highway, without this added potential concern, I feel it's worth considering if this location is truly the best. It was stated at Planning and Zoning last week that it met all the criteria, and therefore it should be approved. Perhaps this is the only location in Washington available given that criteria, but is it the best? Look at how many marriages they choose someone because they meet the criteria, may not be the best. So this is a decision ultimately for the council to consider as well as the applicant. Is the best potential spot in Washington? Was the shelter only considered for Washington? As councilman, you represent your citizens in your ward. Is that what they're wanting, or is it an easy out because ultimately this could be a long, drawn-out, expensive battle that no one really wants? That scenario scares me and upsets me for many reasons. As a person who is a third-generation Washington resident, I stand before you having been affiliated with and served on many nonprofit organization boards. It was always our goal to be a good neighbor and provide a service that is necessary, but not one that has met with much pushback. It would be wonderful to have a mission that everyone could get on board with. Not always is it smooth sailing, but the more transparency you get, the more support you should garner. Consequently, the better problem solving and help with issues becomes. At Planning and Zoning, there were many questions asked whose answers were, I imagine, I suppose, I would think. While I realize it's difficult to approve, to put a plan together without an approval, once it's approved, if the conditions or restrictions are not put in place, I don't think it's a fair resolution to expect everyone to go along with whatever a handful of people think is safe. What I'm asking is that the safety issue be strongly looked at, including transportation for those staying in the temporary shelter, whether it be temporary taxis or whatever. If you think about it, have you ever been down the highway and you're maybe a little distracted? Well, they're a foot, 2 feet. That's not very much room, and you could be right in the crosshairs of a mother and child. I am not saying I am not in favor of shelter. I believe wholeheartedly in supporting these people. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm trying to anticipate some scenarios that good business is good representing people of Washington and their interests, and it's good safety for all those distracted due to their situation.
Barbara,
I am not aware of other towns if they were considered, so I'd like to know that. And my only other question is, I know that they said that this would be funded for 2 years. My concern or my question is this a city project? Is this a county project? When those 2 years are up, who bears maybe some of that burden, not burden, but who's going to be paying those bills? And I think we do deserve to know that as well.
Barb,
So, thank you.
thank you. John Soretto.
I'd like to thank the City Council for the opportunity to address the topic here. I'd like to say I'm a relatively recent resident here in Washington, about 4 years. Prior to living here, I'm from a small coastal town north of Camp Pendleton. For the Marines in the audience, you probably know the town I'm talking about. And I was the board member in our local United Way, and I was chair of the Federal Employee Charitable Drive, where we used to raise $3.5 million a year. So I'm quite familiar with NGOs, measuring performance of charities, and the problem of homelessness. Now, with that said, we are all very sympathetic to the plight of the homeless, and we're obligated to do something for our needy brothers and sisters. As responsible citizens, however, we need to make sure our solutions work, and we do not accidentally or intentionally export our problems to our neighbors out of frustration or out of ignorance. Now, in management terms, we commonly call this externalities. Most of the issues people are talking about here are externalities. Now, while at this City Council nor any other,
I would like to mention something about the zoning code under Article 5, 400-210. I'm sure you have been advised that the city is backed into a corner and should vote yes on this permit. However, under the code 400-210, the City Council, by special permit after public hearing and subject to such protective restrictions as it deems necessary, may authorize the location, extension, and structural alteration of any buildings or uses listed within the district. So again, I'm not opposed to this, but we need to keep in mind everybody around this. It does affect people in this town, and we're set up. Things can go south. Again, I love what they're doing. I love the concept, not that location. And the other question I have: has anybody visited with the county, which I will do, to see if we want to do a Franklin County and come together so we can cover more areas? So a lot of concerns on both sides. This is not an easy decision that you guys have to make. It will be your toughest, but I hope everybody takes everything into consideration on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Curtis Ossie, please.
Curtis Ossie, 7 Edward Place. I just want to say, I don't think anyone here thinks that we shouldn't be working to help the homeless. Anyone who's had any opposition to this. I don't think anybody thinks that we shouldn't be helping the homeless. But the reason for the special use permit that we talked about earlier tonight is to mitigate any negative effects that special use permit may promote. And unfortunately, because of the nature of what's being proposed, the operational details, in my opinion, cannot be decoupled from public safety. A gas station was mentioned as something that needs a special use permit. And yes, the city does not have any oversight in how a gas station is run, but there are mountains of state and federal regulations that dictate how that's going to be run. And so, what I think is important for the council to do is to just make sure that all the concerns, or maybe not all of them, because they may not all be reasonable, but make sure all reasonable concerns are going to be addressed before this permit is issued, and make sure that the city has the ability to have some oversight, because I think that's the biggest concern everybody has is, well, what if there's problems? Well, if you issue the permit without the ability to have oversight, then there's nothing that can be done if there's problems, or I should say when there's problems, because there will be problems, and I have every bit of faith that the folks that want to do it want to correct those problems. But I think the city still needs to be able to have some oversight so that if those problems don't get corrected, that they can step in and help manage things in a way that's best for the city, best for public safety, best for the residents that are close by. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Curtis. Joseph Thatcher, please. Thatcher? Sorry, you left off your O, man, or your R at the end.
Left your R off, Joe.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Thatcher, and I'm a property owner at number 3 Chamber Drive, number 8 Chamber Drive. Probably one of the few properties of people who've came up here and spoke tonight that are within, the 200 or 250 foot notification per code. I attended last week's P&Z meeting, very open-minded. I moved my business to Washington 4 years ago and spent the last 4 years working very hard to grow and develop, and I've really made a strong foothold in Chamber Drive, and I really enjoy the industrial park the way that it is. I'm not opposed to the homeless shelter at all, but really the biggest thing that I think we're overlooking in tonight's meeting and at P&Z's meeting last week is that we're not discussing whether it's good or bad. I have no opinion about it. I feel that I should stay neutral. We're discussing where the building is and what the location and the intended use is for. Highway A and Chamber Drive is a major industrial infrastructure for Washington. Something that nobody has mentioned also is the Public Work Department, which is your main logistical yard where every public work vehicle, all the police department, fire, EMS, everybody refuels at that building. So there was a ton of traffic up and down Chamber Drive. It was discussed this evening that people are going to be able, if they're not met the criteria, they're going to walk away or be asked to leave or forced to leave. Well, the easiest path of least resistance is to walk down Chamber Drive. So what is down Chamber Drive? Chamber Drive is home to probably about 12 to 13 businesses like myself. With those, we all have employees. I would have to probably guess, but pretty close to 300 employees up and down Chamber Drive. So if you take that over a single shift work week, that's 300 trips in, 300 trips out. And that's not including the municipalities, which we also have the City of Washington, the school district yard there as well, which that's also a logistics building, home to a lot of truck traffic and infrastructure being moved in and out of that facility. There's no sidewalks, there's no lighting. And that's just a big concern of mine, and it's a big concern of mine as a liability standpoint for not myself, but other business owners on Chamber Drive. And I think it should be a big understanding for the city, as a potential liability as well, because what if somebody does walk out in the middle of the street with no sidewalks, or people are standing on the edge of the street? You're making a blind-sided corner, making a right out of Highway A if you're in an 18-wheeler, and that's something to be considered. There is not much setback on the front of this building. And there is not, I don't know, per fire code, is there even 26 feet of fire lane around the building with their proposed parking situation and everything like that? And if there were sidewalks put in, would that then limit the potential for fire code? And a lot of people would ask, how do I know this? Well, I just built a building on Chamber Drive, and I learned all about all the setbacks and everything like that. So I think that's something that should definitely be considered, where if the infrastructure is added, does that still make city code? So that's all I had to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Joe?
No, sorry, thank you.
Okay. Next is Judy Payne, please.
Good evening. I'm Judy Payne, and I live at 200 Shawn Court, so I live in the subdivision just down the street. And I also was a community support worker for 10 years for Compass Health. And after that, I worked outreach as a subcontractor for FEMA during the floods. So I am very familiar with the county. And I want to say a couple of things that I have concerns about. And one of them is that these charitable foundations are new. They're new and inexperienced. So they don't have the knowledge about, they want to be a transitional shelter. And that is beautiful and that's wonderful. And Franklin County has needed that for like 15, 20 years. So if they can do it, that's awesome. But transitional housing means that you have to get HUD vouchers and you have to find Section 8 housing or even affordable housing in Franklin County. And it's very, very hard to find. It's very hard to find. Washington is one of the least, has the least transitional housing available. Although I did talk to Annie today and she said that there was one available at the mobile home park on 8th Street. I said, well, how often does that come available? Well, it doesn't come often because you have to wait for somebody to leave in order to get something. So I'm just wondering how transitional we're going to be and what happens to all the people that need help that get turned away. And like they said, will they be hanging around or where will they go? I'm just wondering. And the other concern, actually, I guess that's it. I'm really concerned with the whole transitional thing because I think that Washington is probably the most expensive area to have a homeless shelter in. In Franklin County, there's other areas that are more affordable. And actually, there is some Section 8 housing. It's not available, but at least it's there. Thank you.
Judy. Craig Miller, please.
City Council, thanks for hearing comments on this. I know it's a big issue. My name's Craig Miller. I'm at 1800 Anniston Drive, a little bit down the road on the left. I'm a business owner at Emo's Pizza and Sugar Fire Smokehouse. Just sharing my experience with the issue. I've had the police out at our businesses, not once, not twice, maybe 10 times in the last few years. With the kind of homeless people that I think we're more afraid of, right? These are people with drug problems. They are chronically homeless. They're out back by my dumpster. They're in my dining room, perhaps messing with customers. We're asking for help from the police. We're asking for help from wherever we can to figure that out. Set those people aside. My experience with homelessness here in town comes from my employees. It comes from relatives in the family who have a kid who's maybe on the skids, a kid that is in a really bad home life situation, and there's no place to go. I have employees that don't show up for 3 days, and I'm like, oh man, what's going on? Do I have to let this kid go? What's going on? And I find out he's been living in his car for the last month or so. You're absolutely right when you talk about school children that are on the books at school saying they're in dangerous situations. We track them because we're trying to help them. The school is trying to help them. The police department is trying to help them. The churches are trying to help them. The city of Washington is expending services on them. The hospital system is welcoming them to the ER, warming them on cold winter nights. We're spending money on this issue that we don't necessarily think about. This group has come to the city once before, planning and zoning, and they said, hey, we want to do something to help. We can't help everyone, but we want to try to help someone. And that's in the spirit of Washington, Missouri. I moved here 20 years ago, and one of the things that we fell in love with instantly is that people do offer a hand up to people that are willing to make that effort to get better, to better themselves. People in Washington treated me that way. I feel like I owe the city the same debt to say I need to help do something for our fellow neighbors. They came to the city once before and they asked to put something downtown, and the city wisely said, hey, I don't know if this is our place. I don't know if this is the best use for this. The city took a look at it internally, did their research, looked at codes, put something on the codes of the books, and very thoughtfully said, this is our best option for this type of use. These people that are proposing this weren't discouraged, and they said, hey, what's our next best bet then? Where can we go? Let's play within the rules. Let's get everything that they're asking of us. Let's ask for special uses. I think at Planning and Zoning, they talked about a fence. I think you guys are perfectly within your rights to find a way to kind of restrict this, to say, hey, let's address the needs that we can, but let's move forward with it and say, this is something that the city is already spending money on. This is a group that is offering a gift to the hospital, to the police department, Franklin County Resources, a place to go that the least fortunate of us don't have right now. I'm asking you guys to please consider it thoughtfully and approve this if you can. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Father Mike.
Your Honor, Mayor Hagedorn, distinguished members of the City Council of Washington. My name is Father Mike Boehm. I'm a proud resident of our beloved Washington, and I serve as pastor of St. Francis Borgia Parish in downtown. Thank you for allowing me to address you this evening. I come before you in support of a shelter for the homeless. I've discussed this project with those who have worked hard to organize and plan it. I know them, and I feel confident we can trust their word about the plans they have proposed. Further, they have assured me of their willingness to collaborate with our community and its leaders to work through any issues that may arise. I'm especially heartened by their concern for homeless families and their desire to help people help themselves by providing a structured environment. I've spoken with Father Jim Thebe from Our Lady of Lourdes, Father Carl Shebel from St. Gertrude's, Father Tony Ritter, who serves with me at St. Francis Borgia, and we are all in support of this. Pope St. John Paul II said, I quote, "A society will be judged on the basis of how it treats its weakest members," end quote. We have a moral responsibility to care for those who are struggling. And now we have a good, maybe not perfect, but a good workable solution to help homeless people and families that has been presented to you for your consideration. And we have an opportunity as a community to get behind this plan and support it. I urge you to support this proposed shelter. Finally, please know my prayers for you as you deliberate the business of the City of Washington, on behalf of all who live here and all who visit here. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Father Mike. Dave Chalk, please.
Council, Dr. David Chalk, at Mercy here in Washington, a resident at 4687 Du Bois Court. I just again want to thank all of you for the careful consideration of the issue about the homeless shelter that's been proposed. The speakers before us have outlined all the reasons to do that. The only point I wanted to make to the council that I spoke with the planning and zoning is the social determinants of health. We are blessed in this community. One of the reasons that I'm here to have outstanding health care for a community our size. Though we like to think that we can fix all the ails of the community, with the care that we provide in the hospital and in the clinic and in your homes, we know that that doesn't occur. It is known that only 20% of your overall community's health is determined by the healthcare providers. The other 80% are determined by what are termed as the social determinants of health. That's housing, that's food security, that's the environment, that's education. We are, again, blessed to have outstanding food banks throughout this town and this region. Many of those people are in this room tonight. We are blessed with an outstanding education system. We are blessed to have health care for a community our size that is second to none in a community the size of Washington. The final piece of that puzzle is housing security. Again, most of us in this room tonight are fortunate to have a house over our head every night. But there are many, and still, unfortunately, a somewhat growing number, especially on the tail end of hopefully a waning pandemic. I ask you tonight to put that final piece of the puzzle of a healthy community in place. That final piece is a homeless transitional shelter that we will have available to care for our residents and those in our surrounding communities. Again, thank you very much for your careful consideration.
Thanks, Doc.
Greg. Yeah.
Greg.
Your Honor, it's a pleasure to speak for you, distinguished member of the council. I've heard a lot of comments the last few nights, and I want to...
Greg, can you state your name and address, please?
Oh, excuse me. Greg Holbrook, 500 Brayburn Court, Washington, Missouri. I've heard a lot of comments. Some have merit, some do not. I want to talk about a couple that don't have merit. If you build it, they will come. Sounds great, and I believe everybody that says it believes it. There's no statistical data to support that. But if you just assume that was right, if you build it, they will come, why haven't our homeless gone to St. Charles, where there's a shelter? Why haven't they gone to St. Clair, where there's a shelter? Why haven't they gone to Rolla, where there's a shelter? Why haven't they gone to Troy, where there's a shelter? Why haven't they gone into the city of St. Louis, where there's a shelter? If you build it, they will come. Well, they're built, and our homeless haven't left. So I think that argument just falls flat in its own logic. Secondly, why here? If you listen to the arguments on safety tonight, you couldn't put one in Chamber Drive, anywhere on Chamber Drive. You can't put one out in the Westlink Industrial Park. As much as I understand the traffic concerns on Highway A, the traffic concerns on Bluff Road are just as bad. So where do you go? You go downtown into Washington, where Zero is, or where the plant is downtown? You think that would go over well? There is no ideal place. It's not going to make everybody happy. This place meets your requirements. You're the ones that said it had to be in a industrial zone building. That's where we bought it, to meet your requirements. I would have assumed that you would have thought about, how do people get there? How's this going to work? We are not a warming shelter. People are not going to congregate out around the outside. They don't walk up to it and say, I want in. They come by reference, and most of them will be delivered by the sponsoring agency. We're not a walk-up shelter. These people are in your community. You already have piles of trash. You already have police trouble. You already have everything you're dealing with. We're trying to help that. We're trying to relieve that from you, to take part of it off your plate. I think some very valid concerns have been raised. Highway A is a very valid concern. I'm working right now to figure out, how do we keep people off Highway A? I don't have the details of it. Believe me when I tell you, I don't want anybody hit on Highway A any more than anybody else in this room. And if that means I have to buy a vehicle, if that means I don't know what the solution is, because I don't know what the problem is specifically I am dealing with. It may turn out they all have cars. It may turn out that those who don't have cars can carpool with those that do. It may turn out that churches will offer us a van. It may turn out that I can find a walking path that gets them off Highway A. One closing thought. People have said they want to see a detailed plan. If I presented a detailed plan here tonight, it would only raise more questions than it answers. We'll have a hard enough time getting 3 people to agree on a detailed plan, a little less 9, or a little less 120. What's important is it will be run. It will be like the one in St. Charles where their neighbors are proud of it. And if it's not, I will shut it down. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Greg.
Council, any questions?
Okay, do you guys have any questions?
Can you come up to the podium, please? Thank you.
To the microphone. I relinquished my thing a while ago. I thought it was like a sign-in list you wanted to sign in. I've never been to a city council meeting, so I apologize. Anyway, I would like to go ahead and speak. I live at 96 Northwood Drive in Labadie, Missouri. However, I have worked very closely with the homeless for several years. I was a concierge at Mercy Hospital, where we had a lot of homeless folks that frequented, came in, you know, and we would do for them what we could through the resources that we had. I've been very passionate about this problem for several years. I retired going on 3 years ago from Mercy, and came together with some other folks. Another one actually that was from Faith Baptist Church, and we formed a partnership, and we started serving meals at the American Inn for the homeless. We were there approximately 9 months, and then we were asked to leave. We were there during the winter program that you have, that the city donates to through taxpayer funds, and I do ask that you would look into that and that we might be a little better stewards. We were down there, we witnessed what goes on, and I think some good follow-up would be appropriate. Anyway, we were asked to leave there by the owner because they felt like we were inviting more homeless in than what they wanted there. So we did leave. We prayed for 3 months, and Pastor Craig Waymeyer from Emmanuel Lutheran Church came forward. We've been serving meals there on Tuesday nights, free meals there on Tuesday nights to anyone who wants to come, whether they're homeless in the community, they just want to come and be a part of it. Another part of it, our name is Manna and More. Another part that we do, we help them get driver's license, or not driver's license, but state IDs, birth certificates, all of the necessary things that they need to go back to work. If you've never walked that path with a homeless person, everyone needs to do that, to see what they have to go through to try to get themselves back into society. It's embarrassing, very embarrassing, and I can see why they would not want to try. There's a big faction of people, I think, in Washington that really want this to work, that need to come together as a group. I think there's strength in numbers, and I think there's a lot of us that want to do that. I know some people don't like homeless, they don't like the references to it, and a lot of them don't like the homeless don't like the references to that either. It is tough. I would just like to see some compassion, and I think a lot of us do have compassion, but I think we need to start somewhere with whatever it is, and then maybe be able to build on other places. And I will wrap up. I just do have a scripture, and that scripture is, and I can't quote where it's at, I just know it's in there, that the Bible tells us, except for the grace of God, there go I. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for allowing me to come up here.
Thank you. Does council have any questions about any of it? Folks, I know how traumatic it was for some of you to get up here and speak, and I appreciate that. I don't know about you guys, but everybody's input makes me proud to be a citizen of this community, whether you're for it or against it. So, okay, I'll take a motion to accept the proposal into the minutes.
Make motion.
Motion by Hobmar,
Second.
second by Wessels.
Your Honor, we're accepting the proposal into the minutes?
You're just accepting the letter and the hearing into the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
This is not the ordinance.
Right, I didn't know what proposal was. Right,
My bad.
that's fine.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? By your motion, it's in the minutes. And we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, make a
Voluntary annexation, Presbyterian Church Cemetery.
All right, on your agenda tonight is a request for voluntary annexation to annex the 4.2 acres of the Presbyterian Church Cemetery off Pottery Road. See here highlighted. You can see it is just north of Meadow Lake Estates. The church came to us and said they'd like to just kind of, since everything else has kind of been annexed around them, come in and clean up the border, and that way, if they ever needed to call emergency services, they knew exactly who was going to be responding. So we obviously have no issues with it and recommend approval. They did not request any specific zoning, and by code, any voluntary annexation that isn't specified comes in as R1A. And with the cemetery and being owned by a church, that is permissible in that zone district. So
R1A is permissible for cemetery?
yeah,
Okay.
any churches can go really in any district. So.
All right.
Discussion or questions, you guys? I'll accept a motion. Nope, not
Open it
yet.
up for the floor,
Okay.
taking public comments.
Public comments, please.
Anybody have it?
Okay, motion by Patke. Second by Coulter to accept the voluntary annexation into the minutes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. It is into the minutes.
An ordinance annexing 4.2 acres of property located along Pottery Road in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Patke.
By Patke.
Where in there, in that list that you gave us, where does our work on the old train depot come in? Where is that?
Oh, the freight depot?
Yes.
That is going to be, you've got two sources. You've got that is, yeah. Yeah, capital improvement sales tax is the lion's share of it. I was just trying to find it on here. And then you also have, as Mark said, we had talked, or I think what we had it approved by you as the council when we moved forward with the contract was to use ARPA funds. I've since talked to Mary and Sal about the possibility we could go and use your TIF revenues, and we were going to, before we get started, we may come back to you and request that change to go ahead and use. You've got a fund balance that will more than make up that difference of what we had on that contract for the freight depot.
Okay. So it's under the TIF there.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Do we have a certain amount of time we have to use our ARPA funds, or?
I think by by December 31st, 24?
They have to be contracted by December 31st, 24, and spent by December 31st of 26.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
a little time yet.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to request the capital improvement sales tax fund is, something we've been having pretty good luck with every time. I'd like to just have a detailed, what we spent our money on, what we plan to spend it on there, and even monthly, like when we do our tax, what you send out in the packets each month. Is that an option that we could do just to keep that more up to date, what we're at on that capital improvement sales tax? We scratch off a playground, we've got this coming up, that kind of
We
thing.
do that annually. We don't keep that up to date monthly.
Okay.
So we do it on an annual basis following the audit, because we wait for the audited numbers to come in, and then we balance to the audit, and then we prepare that. But I do have the one from last year that we can put like in the next council packet. And what it does is it shows you, it's basically like a report card. It has, the top page is like the total expenses and the revenues, and it shows the grants coming in. And then it tells you basically what we still have left to spend out of that in total. And then at the very bottom of that page, it shows where we've spent the money to date. So then those balances tie back up to the total expenditures.
And there's also the expectation of what the tax was going to generate, and we've surpassed that. So
Right.
that number does increase due to taxes.
Well, not yet, because it's an 8-year term, but you're right, and overall, we were very conservative in our estimates.
Correct.
Initially. I think
And
it
that's
was-
shown on there too. On that page, I have on there estimated future revenues, and I have all of that estimated out, so it has a potential fund balance there,
Okay.
so.
All right, so great. I just, a little bit more in-depth as far as that goes, where we stand on projects.
Sure.
Both past and currently and future, for that matter.
Right.
In regards to the rest of the budget, I know a couple council members requested a tier program. Some council members requested a cost of living in addition to a merit system. We had a lot of conversation about it. I've had a lot of conversations with city employees, some department heads, and police officers also. And in hearing so, mainly from the police department, my thoughts are here, their evaluation process is a lot different than the rest of the department heads in the city. So therefore, meaning someone in the police department who is deserved an 8% raise is evaluated more strictly and would potentially not get the full 8% and not be completely fair to me, in my opinion.
If I could correct you though, Jeff, the performance valuation the police department uses is the same for all other department heads across the city.
Okay,
That,
okay, well,
I just want to make sure.
that's fine, I get it. I'd hate to miss this, but I think that in lieu of staff's recommendation, I think we should go back to the original 8% cost of living for every city employee and do it to get us caught back up so we have the right pay scale there. I just want it to be known, my homework, Councilman Baird did a lot of homework in trying to find a spreadsheet to list this out. It was never intended to have anyone cut. It was always intended to have someone, especially on the bottom, the entry-level positions, to have more. That was the reason of the whole time, the conversation I met with Councilman Baird to do that was to get the entry-level positions more dollars per hour. We found that in haste with staff, and that's fine. That was only tried to do better for those entry-level positions. So, that being said, with the police department being evaluated, I'm sorry if I say that wrong, being evaluated different, they may not get the total evaluation the same as other departments. So, that being said, for 2022 budget, I believe an 8% cost of living across the board for every city employee is the right thing to do. Going forward, hopefully we catch up where we need to be wage-wise, and it's not this big a jump next year, but we have it where we need to be. So that's my position. Thank you.
You want to make a motion?
If there's no more discussion, I'll make that a motion.
I'll second that.
So Jeff, make your motion again, please, about.
I think he,
My motion is to approve the budget as it is stated here, except for not 7% cost of living and 1% marriage, but instead 8% cost of living across the board.
okay,
And this is a public hearing too, right?
correct.
So,
So we need to open it up. for-
well, I don't know, but I think
Right.
maybe it might be Mark.
What's that?
Question for Mark, but I think we have to have it open to public first, right? Okay.
But I think you can still vote on his motion.
Okay.
And hear public comments on that motion.
Okay.
So you still need to, and you.
I'll second it.
Jeff, so.
Right. Any other discussion on that?
Any other discussion, guys? This is,
I'm sorry, who seconded? Thank you.
Chad, sorry.
more discussion. All right, let's vote.
Let's just make sure this is just the motion, and then we'll open up the floor for any public comments. But this is a,
Passing the budget or the ordinance or anything yet.
Just to move it to 8.
Right.
Straight 8. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, by your motion, it's an 8% across the board. Okay, Sherry?
We just need to go ahead now to open it up, public, if any public has any comments with regards to the budget. That's okay. That's all
Okay,
right.
public discussion on this, please.
Evening. My name is Stanton Skrjanik, 1407 East 5th Street. I am a taxpaying citizen of Washington, Ward 1. I'm sorry to see that neither of my councilmen are here. I'm a new resident, and as part of my effort to become more involved and a part of my community, I've attended every city council meeting I can. When I taught high school government and economics for 6 years, I told my students, if you don't speak up, you might as well not have a voice. No one may listen, some may resent you, but that is better than allowing your citizenship to wilter in silence. This council is considering to opt to give 8% raises across the board to city employees. Before I make my comment here, I want to make clear that I hold no ill will to any city employees or workers. They're just trying to do a job, make a living, and go home. And yet, in a democracy, citizens must speak on their government, even though their government is made of their fellow citizens. The argument for the raises is we need to retain talent, we need to match inflation, et cetera, et cetera. We need. Consider that countless mom and pop shops in this town and across the country must do the same. Unlike a government with a legal requirement to exist and funded by mandatory taxes, they have no guarantees of financial success or even their own existence. And even though businesses have similar goals as municipal governments, they cannot fall back on taxpayers in hard times. Instead, they must halt pay rises, reduce pay, halt projects, and sometimes even lay off workers. And then some must still close their doors for good. The bottom line, when things get bad, businesses have to batten down the hatches and wait out the storm. It's therefore unfair, perhaps even unjust, that businesses must sacrifice and struggle while this council spends on what they cannot. Spend, by the way, money that was not earned but taken by the law. This is a corrosive practice to give raises by simply being hired rather than by awarding by merit. It is also repugnant to set a precedent that says, when our economy is in shambles and groceries cost almost double, you can rely on your government to sacrifice nothing. In fact, they might even spend more. Looking up the history of Washington, as I have the past couple of months since we moved here, this seal here has a blacksmith. And I think of a blacksmith during the peak of inflationary period in this country, the 1850s, 1860s, during the Civil War, how that blacksmith during that time had to work twice as hard to ensure that the quality of their product was good enough to justify a higher price during that time. And how raw they must have felt to know that their government might have spent their money to pay government blacksmiths. I would urge you to pass another amendment instead of approving an 8% pay rise across the board. Do 50-50. I would urge my own councilmen, but they're not here. So I would urge one of you to offer an amendment to the ordinance, splitting it 50-50. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay.
Motion accepting the minutes.
Okay, motion accepted into the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Patke, second by Holtmeyer. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And nay? None. Okay. By your vote, the motion passes, accepted into the minutes. Go ahead.
An ordinance approving the budget of the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Patke.
Brought forward by Patke. Any discussion, guys? Okay. Go
An ordinance approving the budget of the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri for fiscal year 2022-2023. Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Coulter?
Aye.
Briggs?
Yes.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels? Hydrich?
Aye.
Okay, by your vote, we have a budget. Thank you.
Citizens' comments?
Any citizens like to comment? Okay.
Ordinances and resolutions. I'm sorry, John, do you have anything? Okay, thank you. Ordinances and resolutions. An ordinance establishing the salary for the city administrator of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Patke.
Brought forth by Patke.
Your Honor, if I may, in my 9 times sitting up here, we get to this point of the year, and everyone looks at it like it's a number that's we shouldn't do, and you talk about it. It's an awkward situation. We know Darren. We know the past administration. We can squabble on the number, or you can look back, and when it was time to hire, the people who came and interviewed and requested a lot higher salary than this, we take for granted what some of the staff does here in the city, I being one of those, and questioning them on a numerous occasions every week. But when it comes down to it, I think Darren does a great job for the city. And he's, along with the 8% raise, is this salary that we are before us tonight. So I would like to approve that as I brought it forward in the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Other comments?
Yes, it was mentioned just briefly there about private business and so forth. And one of the things I've always looked at here too is, I don't know how many people who become the CEO, if you will, or the primary administrator, supervisor for 140 staff members, give or take, I think this is more than, well, it's not high enough, but I have no problem at all with this. He does a good job, too.
Other discussion? I echo those comments, you guys. I have had the utmost privilege to work with Darren on a daily basis. If you guys know my story, I was in the Air Force. I went to the Air Force Academy. I lived and breathed leadership for the 11 years I was in Air Force. And I've known a lot of generals, 4 stars and more, NSA people, stuff like that, the leaders of this country. And believe me, this guy sitting next to me is right there. So are we paying him enough? I don't think so, but that's what we're voting on. And by God, he deserves it. So
I would just like to recall the past 9 years when we used to sit here and squabble and joke about whether Darren was worth it or not. But tonight we're kind of past that stage, I hope. So.
Oh, boy.
all right, what do we need to get this guy his salary, Sherry?
An ordinance establishing the salary for the city administrator of the City of Washington, Missouri. Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Coulter?
Aye.
Briggs?
Yes.
Patke?
Yes.
Wessels? Hydrich?
I still got to sit here and squabble. Aye.
Thank you, guys. By the vote, the ordinance establishing the salary for the administrator passes.
Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a dispatching services agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and the City of New Haven, Missouri.
Patke.
Brought forth by Patke.
So this is an ordinance, as you well know, I think the past 2 years, we've had 1-year contracts with the New Haven Police Department to go ahead and provide dispatching services. This is now a 3-year agreement. We've decided they had requested to go further than 1 year. Jennifer's here in case you have any questions, but basically this would be a 3-year deal. You do see a 5% increase each year. The first year it would be $7,507. Second year, $7,882, and then the third year would be $8,276. So if you have any questions, Jennifer's here in case you have any.
Jennifer, just a broad question. Does the compensation make up for the calls we get from New Haven point blank?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't get that many calls from them. It's not overbearing on dispatch or anything like that.
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you.
And did I see in our packet too that they have also already approved this contract with the increases?
Yes.
Okay.
They're aware of it, yes.
Other questions?
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a dispatching services agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and the City of New Haven, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels. Heidrich.
Aye.
Okay, by your vote, the dispatching agreement with us in New Haven passes.
An ordinance accepting the extension of the contract per the terms identified in the initial contract by 1 year at the amount quoted from Oakley Fertilizer, St. Louis, Missouri, to purchase bulk rock salt by the City of Washington, Missouri.
Pat,
I think Joe was first.
you got it.
Brought up by Holtmeyer. Tony.
Good evening, Council. This is a recommendation to accept a quote from the Oakley Fertilizer Company. We have a contract with them now with 4 option years. They gave us a pretty good price quote in there per ton, and when we compared that to what the county got their contract for, we think it's a pretty good deal. And more so, Oakley's a really good company. They're a one-stop deal. I call one guy, and he gets me my trucks usually within a couple days. Whatever I recommend, I say I'd like them Thursday, I get them on Thursday. So really a good company, and understanding that the prices all went up, I guess probably because fuel costs went up, but I think all in all, it'll be a good deal for us. Keep in mind, we did finish off topping off our salt dome this week at the previous contract amount, which was $67 a ton, so
Okay.
And do you want to elaborate? What's the county purchasing?
9371.
There you go. Just making you aware of that.
The Morton Salt bid won't happen either for them because Morton Salt wants a guaranteed tonnage per year. That's not per ton what they want, but that's.
Tony, you're saying you topped off right now. Assuming a typical winter, will you go through all of that, and then how much more will you have to purchase?
we normally do not.
Okay.
We usually end the summer with, a third of it left over. And then for our own benefit, I mean, if we didn't like the price of this contract, we could hold off and rebid it back out in October and try again if something, if prices really drop back down and try to get a better deal.
That's not worth the gamble.
What's that?
My opinion is at this price, it's not worth that gamble.
Tony and I talked about this. I mean, I know it's a 27% increase, but, if you look across the board, the increases were much higher. This is a good price. There's no reason to send it back out and kind of ruin that relationship for this 1 year. So it's, with our current situation, stockpile, him and I talked, and this is probably the right path to go right now. What is the right path to go right now? Sorry.
Okay. Further discussion?
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's vote.
An ordinance accepting the extension of the contract per the terms identified in the initial contract by 1 year at the amount quoted from Oakley Fertilizer, St. Louis, Missouri, to purchase bulk rock salt by the City of Washington, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Heidrich.
Aye.
Okay, by your vote, motion passes for the salt.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. for engineering services for the High Street Reconstruction and ADA Improvements Project.
Holtmeyer.
Brought forth by Holtmeyer.
Okay, Council, this is an STP 80/20 project. City pays 20 cents on the dollar to get this done. This would reconstruct, make ADA compliant sidewalks on High Street from 5th Street to Front Street. It's kind of part of the bigger ADA transition plan. The roadway itself needs paving work. Typically, in order for you to get federal funds to offset some of those costs, so you're not paying 100% of that, you have to do some sidewalk work, those type of things along the corridor. The sidewalk is part of the traveled way. So with doing so, 80/20 cost share, we've been utilizing the strategy over the past couple of years that you get 20 cents on the dollar as well for your engineering fees. So rather than bog down our engineering department where we could be focused on other things where you get 100% benefit out of that, when we go out for these contracts, on these STP projects. That is in your best interest. It is the only way with current staffing we can keep up with the needs of the project across the city, and it is a solid strategy to continue. We did receive multiple SOQs, statement of qualifications for this. As we do with any qualification project, myself, Andrea, Darren, maybe Kevin, just depends on what the project really is. But we review those independently, and then we composite score them to come out with who is the most qualified firm with what they've proposed on that project. HDR was chosen to be that. We did negotiate this contract to get this done. This would take care of the construction inspection part of it as well. So we are respectfully asking you to approve this contract, and we will start design in the next couple weeks. Surveying will happen. I believe it's a 2026 project. So like any federal project, it's
John,
way out there.
how's our sewer and water pipes underneath there? Did we slip line any of that?
We did, yeah. We're aggressively slip lining on that end of town. Hold on a second. There are blocks that are, there are blocks that are not, but we do know where they are. We have plans to get that done. As far as the slip lining project across the city, in the next 5 years, we should have almost 80 to 90% of the brand new sewer pipes underneath our streets. We've been aggressively going after it.
Yeah, just,
Capital improvement sales tax, sewer fund, stormwater fund. So just 3 different funding mechanisms to get those things done. So to answer your question,
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident we got a good plan in place.
John, HDR is also the design
Jefferson
for
Street.
Jefferson Street.
Correct.
Let you guys know as well.
Bump outs.
Great news. Other discussions, you guys?
Okay, Sherry.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. for engineering services for the High Street reconstruction and ADA improvements project. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels. Heidrich.
Okay, by your vote, you guys, High Street reconstruction ADA improvements passed.
Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the city of Washington, Missouri to accept the proposal from Granicus for short-term lodging maintenance software.
Becky. I mean, hold on.
Okay. Introduced by Pat Key. Go ahead, Sal.
So, good evening. I think we talked about this for well over a year now, but as we currently, with our short-term lodging, or what most people call them our Airbnbs, we don't have the most effective way of monitoring them and maintaining the bed tax and making sure everyone is on a level playing field. So, for example, right now, this past quarter, we had 35 properties submit saying, "Yep, here's our bed tax. That here we're doing it legally." But we've seen online that there are properties that actively list their property on there, and there's no way for us to necessarily find their address because Airbnb, when you VRBO, it doesn't give you an address. So in the past, what we've tried to do is either Nick or Heather, someone from finance once a quarter, will look on the main sites that people advertise on, and if we can recognize a house that we know is not actively listed, we would try and send a letter. That obviously is not very effective, especially if someone is just renting out one room. And it's a picture of a room, we can't tell. And that's really not fair to the people who are doing it legally and actually coming in and getting inspected and paying their bed tax. And I know this is a problem that a lot of communities have faced, so there's a number of software companies that have stepped forward to offer a solution. So Emily Underdown and I met with 3 different companies that offer short-term lodging maintenance programs, and they have a lot of different options. 2 of them were really expensive, like close to $40,000 a year, and we weren't sure how much we were actually missing to cover up that, to make that up. The one, this Granicus, gave us a proposal where they had 5 or 6 different features, and you could pick and choose like a menu and just pay for the features you're using. And so we went to the Tourism Commission in August and requested actually a 1-year contract with Granicus for the Tourism Commission to pay it. So it's about $6,100. It will not come out of the city's general fund. It will be paid for the first year by the Tourism Commission. And so I'm not asking for any money tonight, but just to accept this proposal with them. And what it'll allow us to do is we actually give the company, Granicus, a letterhead and a letter, a compliance letter, that they find the people who are not doing it legally, who say, okay, we give them the 35 addresses that are updated. They have the software to actually find the mailing addresses for all the ones that are on there, and they believe there's 54. So that's over 20% of our potential revenue from short-term lodging that we're missing out on. And so they will send a letter for us. They will actually contact them and tell them to call City Hall. They have so many days to get into compliance. And so that's one side of it. We don't have to have our staff doing that and scrolling through photos of rental advertisements. And the second side of it, which we're excited, is the actual short-term lodging tax maintenance, where they will check, say you post your house on 6 different websites. I think there's 7 really that are commonly used. And it will see how often you checked your availability off there, and it will, based on our bed tax, calculate what they think the bed tax should be. So this keeps someone from saying, oh, I booked it out two nights this month, when really they did 12. And so we can counter that and say, no, it shows on here that you actually booked it out X amount of times, and then they can either pay it or counter it and say, no, I just took it off the market, which is still plausible, but this at least starts the conversation and gives us some evidence to show otherwise. So again, tonight we're just asking to accept the proposal from them for 1 year for just $6,100 that the Tourism Commission will pay for. Even if we get 2 new Airbnbs, or 2 Airbnbs that are currently operating to come in under this, that will more than pay for itself. On average, an Airbnb pays about $5,000 a year in bed tax.
The Tourism Commission retains about 2.5% of the total of the 5% that's taxed across the board. So they retain that for special projects for that bed tax. So they have that for other things. They've used those funds to help with certain, if we have, trying to think of like a conference or something that comes into town, et cetera. I think when the Zither folks were here a couple years ago, they went ahead and contributed to that. There's been other conferences I know that
They
they've.
bought the bus,
Right.
tourism shuttle.
Well, and
so-
when Sal and Emily presented it at the Tourism Commission, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna cover the cost, plus the fact that they're talking about recovering far above that, so.
Yes, if
worth a
they're
shot.
truly 54 and all of them pay the same average, then that's 20% more than what we're getting right now on our, I want to say it was it's over $100,000 that comes in just from that, so.
So will they will continue to fund that, or are we gonna do it after the first year?
So after the first year, if it funds itself, then no, that they can, the increase from the software should pay for itself. If it doesn't come to fruition, we'll just cancel it and do it the old way.
So we won't be paying for it ever?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Whole goal is that it's self-sufficient.
That might be the easiest vote we have tonight.
There you go. You got a couple more coming up.
Other discussion.
I'm just curious the difference between a $6,000 company and a $40,000 company.
Right.
Well, they had a menu, you could pick and
It
choose.
must have been a
The
big
other
one.
one, it was the whole package.
It
Well,
had been a big
some of those
menu.
other companies were giving us a demo, and like, this is what we do for Aspen. I'm like, well, I don't need you to do for us what you do for Aspen, so, it's just a lot easier to pare it down. Sure.
Guido,
Hey now.
Didn't really care.
Any more discussion, you guys? Okay, Sherry?
An ordinance authorizing and directing the City of Washington, Missouri to accept the proposal from Granicus for short-term lodging maintenance software. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Hydrich.
Aye.
All right, by your vote, Granicus is approved.
An ordinance amending Schedule XA pedestrian crosswalk of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Okay, sponsored by Holtmeyer.
Okay, council, I'm trying to make this the easiest vote tonight. This pedestrian crosswalk here at Cedar, Fifth Street, we do have the west side of the intersection marked as a crosswalk for, we do require all crosswalks to be put in ordinance form. This one would actually add one on this side, I believe, of the roadway to just kind of complete the intersection. So that may actually be easier, I don't know, but.
Okay.
Question?
Trying to win, I guess we'll try.
Discussion. Okay.
An ordinance amending Schedule XA pedestrian crosswalk of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Heidrich.
Aye.
Okay, by your vote, Granicus, or not Granicus, pardon me, the Cedar North Side crosswalk passes.
An ordinance amending the provisions of Chapter 335, Schedule II of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri by adding provisions for a stop sign at the location described below.
Patke.
Okay, brought forth by Patke, please.
This is Fair Street at Esther. Fair as it approaches Esther. So again, well, sorry, I did not mean to. Again, a fairly simple, I believe, one. Fair Street is to stop and yield to cross traffic on Esther. This is an old photo here. There is no stop sign or an ordinance in place to do so. All that we are asking to do is approve a stop sign and an ordinance to do so.
That's right at the pool, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, repaved, both acres repaved, new sidewalks. And again, by ordinance, your code requires you by ordinance to approve stop signs.
Discussion. Sherry?
An ordinance amending the provisions of Chapter 335, Schedule II of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri by adding provisions for a stop sign at the location described below. Holtmeyer. Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Heidrich.
Okay, by your vote, we've got a stop sign at Fair and Esther.
An ordinance amending Section 420.035 of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Okay, sponsored by Holtmeyer.
Apologize, which one is that? I don't.
This is for the pipe.
H, 7H.
Triple wall
Oh,
pipe.
yes, I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah, this is, so 2017, technology was, we used to just have concrete and metal pipes underneath our streets. The corrugated metal pipe that you typically see, corrugated metal is a problem because obviously it rusts out over time, and concrete, has its own issues. So constructability wise. So this is the gray colored plastic pipe, not the black colored plastic pipe. Those are two separate pipes made with two separate materials. All this does is updates the specification to the new ASTM standards. It's just a spec update's all it is. Same material, same everything. They just do a little bit different testing. It does allow for double and triple wall, but it will give you essentially the same stiffness as a metal and or concrete. So we are asking you to just update the ordinance.
Discussion. Okay, Sherry.
An ordinance amending Section 420.035 of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels. Heidrich.
By your vote, the ordinance amendment passes.
Commission, committee, and board reports. Preliminary plat approval, Beaker Heights.
All right. Keeping with pretty easy presentations, this is a request for a very simple preliminary plat on Beaker Road. You can see here, it's just south of Deer Run. It was one of the original homes whenever it's kind of been developed around there. It is currently zoned R1A, single-family residential. It allows 10,000 square foot minimums, and the owner is wishing to subdivide it into two lots, each of them over the 10,000 square foot minimums. So this went to planning and zoning last week, and they unanimously passed it, and we recommend the same.
Discussion.
Make motion set in the minutes.
Okay. Whole mission.
Second.
Okay, motion by Holtmeyer, second by Patke to accept in the minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nope. All right, it's accepted into the minutes.
An ordinance approving the final plat of Beaker Heights in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Heidrich.
Aye.
By your vote, the ordinance is approved.
Preliminary plat approval, Victorian Manor.
All right, the next plat is That's actually a step that we have to get done in order for us to, I think it just says slides for PP, I'm sorry. There you go.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So as you all are aware, we are in the process of acquiring right-of-way from AmeriCare in order to do our Earthcrest extension, the bridge here, and then over to Fernacey Drive. And in order to acquire the right-of-way, we have to have a lot created to do so. And so this plat here creates Lot 1. It is just shy of 10,000 square feet, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's creating that lot, and that is large enough for our right-of-way per engineering designs. So just recommending to approve this plat.
We get this done, then we can go ahead and close by the end of the month.
What is, it looks like that thing is kind of L-shaped, so you're not including, yeah,
We're not taking everything to the south.
Yeah,
We're just
it's
taking the
just-
portion
just that tip up on
right
the-
there.
Tip, yep.
That's the lot that's being created for us.
Okay, but why is this one outlined? I don't understand.
That's the whole, that's the
That was the
original lot.
whole entire parcel.
It's the parent parcel. That's the parent.
That's how it
parcel,
looks today.
And it's being subdivided into two.
Right.
Okay, all
And we
right.
are acquiring the northern new
You
part.
see it in this plot. 1, 2.
Okay.
Other questions or concerns?
I do have one more. That purple on there, on the codes for the zoning, it says SD, I'm not familiar with.
Senior Community District, we actually no longer have that in our code anymore, but anything that was senior community from 2017 still remains. Now it would be a planned unit development.
Thank you.
Make motion, send it to the minutes.
Okay, motion by Holtmeyer,
Second.
second by Coulter. All those in favor, say aye.
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 By your motion, it's in the minutes.
I don't think that we introduced the ordinance for Beaker Heights.
You don't have any introduction?
So moved.
Okay,
We have to
Motion.
vote again?
okay. Motion by Patke,
Do we have to vote again, Mark?
second by Holtmeyer.
Are you talking about just the recommendation or?
No, the final plat ordinance. I don't think that we introduced that.
So,
He introduced, Packy did.
Post haste.
Don't need a second.
Third reading.
So I need to read it again?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. An ordinance approving the final plat of Beaker Heights in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Okay.
Moses.
Aye.
Hydrich.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, passed again. By your vote. Sorry, guys, we're all getting tired.
An ordinance approving the final plat of subdivision Common Ground A, Washington Victoria Manor, Plat 1 in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Patke.
Introduced by Patke. And discussion. Nope. All right.
An ordinance approving the final plat of the subdivision of Common Ground A, Washington Victorian Manor, Plat 1 in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Hydrich.
Okay, by your vote, the ordinance for Victoria Manor is passed.
Preliminary plat approval, Stonecrest subdivision, Plat 17.
Okay.
Sal?
Okay, so this is the next, the next plat for Stonecrest. This does involve only single-family homes. You can see here along Northcrest Drive, there's these parcels here that are currently vacant, and on the other side, they've started to be built, and so they're looking to kind of just mirror it. It is zoned R1A, single-family residential, so it does have that 10,000 square foot minimum. And then you can see here, you got the 5 lots along Northcrest that they all meet that minimum. They have the appropriate easements in place and have access to Northcrest. And then here, this lot 231 is actually proposed to be that size by city staff. After talking to the fire department, they need about 27,000 square feet for their proposed firehouse. And so that's why that lot looks the way it does. We are recommending approval of the preliminary and final plat because all the public improvements are already in place. There's no need for an escrow. The only change we have, and P&Z also recommended this change, was that on this plat, it says Foxcrest, and Foxcrest comes into Earthcrest here. we feel there's no reason to change the street name and just keep it uniform across the board, and we did have that recommendation from Emergency Services as well. And so we recommend approval with the amendment of this before it gets recorded, that this Fox Crest becomes Earth Crest. So that way Earth Crest can continue all the way to
Rabbit Trail.
So, Sal, did you have any comments at P and Z on this, or any?
Nope, they unanimously voted in favor, and the applicant, KJU, knows we are requesting that name change and was fine with it, so.
Other questions or discussion, guys?
Make a motion, put it in the minutes.
Holtmeyer's
Second.
motion, second by Patke in the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
By your vote, it's in the minutes. Sherry.
An ordinance approving the final plat of Stonecrest subdivision, Plat 17, in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Patke.
Brought forth by Patke.
Any questions?
Any questions, guys? Or we vote again? Second reading, please.
An ordinance approving the final plat of Stonecrest subdivision, Plat 17, in the city of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Holtmeyer,
Aye.
Coulter,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Patke,
Yes.
Wessels, Hydrich.
Okay, by your vote, the ordinance for the final plat of the Stonecrest is passed.
Mayor's report.
Oh, okay. Thanks for coming tonight, you guys. I appreciate that. Especially appreciate the pros and comments about our homeless shelter. It's been a busy night, and I know everybody's tired, so I won't get on my soapbox. So, thank you for coming.
City Administrator's report.
The only comment I have, thank you for your work on the budget. Hopefully, like I said, we can move forward now. Like I said, we knew it was a little bit of a difficult year to go ahead and prepare that for you, but like I said, thanks for your input, and that's all I have. I do have 2 items for executive session.
Council comments.
Guys, here's your chance. Everybody's tired, all right.
City Attorney's report. Public vote on whether or not to hold a closed meeting to discuss personnel, legal, and real estate matters pursuant to Section 610.021 RSMO 2000. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Coulter.
Aye.
Briggs.
Yes.
Patke.
Yes.
Wessels.